Welcome to Nice and Blunt. My name is Adam Riancho, and it's time for my Week 3 running back rankings, where I will mention some stats in this video. We're getting a little bit of information that I do think is relevant, but keep in mind, it's only Week 2. Some of it is not that legit in terms of long-term viability. So take it with a grain of salt as I mention these stats across the video, but I'm also going to bring up the 5-6 players who are not ranked in this video due to injury, most notably Christian McCaffrey has been placed on IR. So another month of Jordan Mason, Isaiah Pacheco also on IR, at least 1 or 2 months of him out of the picture. That's not good. And I also did not rank Kenneth Walker with that oblique injury. He might play, but for now, I'll just rank Charbonnet and adjust on Saturday. Remember, I always adjust these rankings on Saturday with all of the injury news to clarify the situation. So keep that in mind. But for now, I did not rank Walker. I also didn't rank Raheem Mostert. I think he will be out for at least another week. And then Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks, all obviously on IR as well. You can't start them. But let's begin at the top, where I have Jordan Mason at the Rams as my number 1 guy. He has been very consistent in terms of volume, 25 touches per game, 128 yards per game on 5.1 yards per carry. Not really catching passes, but I don't think it matters. This is an excellent matchup as well. So far, the Rams have allowed 155 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. So love this spot. I think their offense is going to be pretty brutal with all those injuries. So the Niners will dominate, and without Debo, they'll lean on Mason even more. I trust him as a lock in your lineup for at least 20 points this week. Love the matchup. I'm starting Mason no matter what. Number 2, I have DeVon Achane at Seattle, and I'm tempted to rank him number 1 because he's catching 7 receptions per game on a total 23 touches per game, but the loss of Tua does hurt him. I think he's hurt the least of all of the Dolphins players. However, it's not good. They're not going to score as many points, and I do worry about them on the road, cross-country, against Seattle. But the Seahawks have actually allowed 122 rushing yards per game, so it is a solid matchup so far. It looks like a plus spot for Achane. So not going to panic on him at all. I think he'll be perfectly fine, especially with the other injuries to running backs in this backfield. You trust him by far and away in the Dolphins running back core. But number 3, I have Bijan Robinson versus the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have not been the best matchup, only giving up about 90 total yards to the running back position per game, but Bijan's super talented, and although the touchdowns have yet to hit, I'm not worried about it. The volume is proof as to why you should trust him. 20.5 touches per game, 4.5 receptions per game for 117 yards per game on 5.2 yards per carry. If the touchdown hits, you're going to get probably 19, 20 points this week, and the talent will inevitably win out. So you're not benching Bijan. Don't get cute. Number 4, I have Breece Hall versus the Patriots, and this has been a stout run defense so far. Only 47 rushing yards per game allowed by New England. So not great for Breece, but I don't really care. He's also going to catch plenty of receptions. So far, he's averaging 6 catches per game already, and that's what he gave you last season. So I trust him. The lowest I'll ever rank him is like RB5, but this merits a bit of a downgrade. I will bump him down just to RB4 this week. Number 5, I have Josh Jacobs at Tennessee, and they are insulating Malik Willis. If he's the quarterback again, then expect elite volume for Jacobs. Last week he had 32 rush attempts, and I don't think that will change. He's not getting any targets with Malik Willis, but I don't really care. If you get 30 plus touches, you're a top 5 play at running back this week. So at Tennessee, he'll be fine. You're starting him for sure. Number 6, though, I have Saquon Barkley at New Orleans, and it has been a difficult matchup, but it's against the Panthers and the Cowboys. So 50 rushing yards per game, not really what I believe will be the case all year long. I don't really read into this matchup too much, but he also dropped the game winner, so added motivation here to get back on track. I think he will score a touchdown in this game. He's averaging 26 touches per game so far, 3 catches per game for 124 yards per game. I'm trusting Saquon every single week. Number 7, though, big upgrade for Alvin Kamara after last week's 4-touchdown performance at the Cowboys. I was a little worried about that matchup. I should not have been. And Kamara still looks fantastic. Even at 29 years old, he is looking like a top 10 play every week. I hope he stays healthy. For now, I'm not going to worry about it. He's averaging 21 touches per game, 3.5 catches per game for 145 yards per game. Obviously, last week does skew the numbers a little bit, but this is a good matchup. So far, the Eagles in the run game have allowed 140 rushing yards per game, and that's definitely something you want to lean into. So I trust Kamara. After last week, no one's benching him. That is for sure. Number 8, though, I'm still holding strong on Jahmyr Gibbs as a top 10 option. It's been a relatively even touch split in Detroit. Gibbs is seeing 17.5 per game, Montgomery 16.5, so close to 50-50. But when it comes to Gibbs, he's catching 5.5 receptions per game and also running for 5.2 yards per carry. So he's the guy you want. The touchdowns have slightly favored Montgomery so far, but it's only week 2. I think that will shift in favor of Gibbs pretty soon, and he's bound to explode sooner or later. So as he gets further away from that hamstring injury, I think he will be fantastic, and I like this matchup. I think there is some massive upside for Gibbs in a potential shootout. So love him. I'm still ranking him top 10, but at number 8, a little bit lower than where I expected to rank him coming into the year. Number 9, I have James Cook versus Jacksonville, and damn, he had a massive game in week 2 with 3 touchdowns. That's not going to happen for him every week, but he's been pretty efficient, 5 yards per carry so far on solid volume, 17 touches per game, 2 of which are catches for 99 total yards per game. I trust his floor pretty significantly. I think he's a very safe play every single week. It's a good matchup with some PPR upside as well. The Jags have allowed 53 running back receiving yards per game, and pretty much all of those will go to Cook this week. So like the upside, the floor is very safe. Let's just hope those touchdowns continue to hit. That's what he needs to keep up the top 10 production. But I think this week it works out. I think they win over the Jags. Number 10, though, I got Derrick Henry at Dallas, and I'm a little worried about this ranking because Derrick Henry has been very touchdown dependent so far through 2 weeks, but he scored in each of those 2 games. I think it will continue in this offense. Like Gus Edwards scored 13 touchdowns last year. Henry is probably going to score 15 this season, but if he doesn't, I'd be a little worried about it, because he's not catching passes. He's averaging 16.5 touches per game, only 1 catch through 2 weeks, and only 4.2 yards per carry for 71 total yards per game. So that's not like insanely elite. You'd expect a little bit more consistency, but the touchdowns are carrying you so far. So I think that's what helps you keep him in your lineup. But if it evaporates, don't be surprised if Henry does not give you 10 plus points. And Dallas here has been a decent matchup, obviously because of the Kamara game last week, but they're also allowing 55 receiving yards to running backs per game so far. But Henry's not catching passes, so I'm not sure if that really matters here. I'm a little worried about it, but I think I'm still going to keep him in the lineup. I think you have to, based on where you drafted him. Number 11, I have Jonathan Taylor versus Chicago, and he has not seen elite usage yet. Only 15 touches per game, only 1 reception per game, but 92 yards per game is why I trust him. It will increase in terms of volume as they try to not demand too much from Richardson. Taylor is averaging 5.4 yards per carry. So when you see that, you know he's bound for more consistent touches in this offense, and I think this is the game where they start to pivot to him even more because the Bears have a great defense, especially in the secondary. So their run defense has not been as elite as last year through 2 games, and it's not a downgrade so far. I think Taylor is still a running back you trust. He went over 100 yards last week, and I think he might do it again pretty consistently week over week. So still going to start him at RB11. I could be a little too low here. I just want to see the volume tick up. Number 12, I have Joe Mixon at Minnesota, and he's seen very heavy volume through 2 games. 22.5 touches per game, 3 catches per game for 114 yards per game. He did put up 175 in week 1 against Indy. So it came back down last week. That might have led to his early injury, all that volume he's seen. But I think he's going to be okay. According to reports, it's not too serious of an ankle injury, but it might keep him out in week 3. So we'll need to monitor this situation. I'm not 100% sure he will play this week, and you might need to lock up Cam Akers or perhaps Dameon Pierce behind him. But Pierce is hurt. I would be looking to Akers as the handcuff in Houston right now. At number 13, though, I have Zack Charbonnet versus the Dolphins, and they just got torched by James Cook. So you can definitely envision another running back scoring a lot of points on them. They are giving up touchdowns to the position through the first 2 weeks, and Charbonnet has scored 2 touchdowns as well himself through the first 2 games. In week 2, when he saw the bulk of the volume with no Walker, it was 19 touches, 5 of which were catches, only 69 yards, but the floor is still pretty high based on that volume. So I think the touchdown happens again, and that's why I'm going to trust him. I think the Seahawks win, and that should bode well for Charbonnet in this matchup. So leaning on the volume, I think he is a top 15 play for the second week in a row. At number 14, though, I have James Conner versus Detroit, and the Lions have only allowed 53 rushing yards per game. It's second year in a row. They are a tough matchup on the ground, but Conner's volume is too high for you to bench him. 20.5 touches per game, 2 catches per game for 104 yards per game. This is on par with like Breece Hall and Bijan, not far off, but an average of 4.6 yards per carry, very solid. He offers a very high floor every single week, and maybe he doesn't pop off for like 100 plus yards, but I think he finds the end zone. I would trust his receiving volume as well. This probably turns into a shootout. So you got to start Conner. He's been too good to bench. Number 15 is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. I have Travis Etienne at Buffalo, and the Bills are vulnerable in the passing game to opposing running backs, mainly due to game script. Like, look at Achane last week with 7 catches. But overall, through two games, they're giving up 7.5 catches per game to the position for 73 receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. So if that occurs once more, Etienne is in line for very good usage, and Tank Bigsby is currently questionable. So the volume should be there. Bigsby was irrelevant last week, and so far Etienne still appears to be a safe play, averaging 15 touches per game. Not amazing, but 2.5 catches per game for only 59 yards per game. 3.8 yards per carry does have me concerned, but I think he gets it done in the passing game, and that definitely bumps up his ceiling. I think he scores a touchdown as well, and that's why I'm still starting Etienne. I think you have to, based on where you drafted him, but I don't think he's as safe as we expected coming into the season. Number 16, I have Rhamondre Stevenson at the Jets, and the Jets have allowed 48 receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. So I think there will be an extra boost in value here for Rhamondre in PPR formats, and he's seen massive volume on a team with no receivers so far. So that's not going to change. They are leaning on him heavily. He's averaged 25.5 touches per game through 2 weeks. Only 2.5 catches per game, so it's mostly all on the ground, but an average of 108 yards per game is fantastic. The floor is exceptional with Rhamondre, so got to keep rolling him out there. He is a clear top 20 play. This week I have him at number 16. Number 17, a guy I don't think you can bench if you drafted J.K. Dobbins of the Chargers this week on the road at Pittsburgh. And the Steelers have also given up 47 receiving yards per game to running backs, so that's kind of nice. Gus does not catch passes, so if it happens again, it's all going to Dobbins. But this is a 50-50 split between Gus and JK, but last week it still led to 18 carries for Dobbins. So the volume is high. This team wants to run the ball, and that's not going to change. Let's hope Dobbins stays healthy because he's looked fantastic so far. He has 2 straight games with over 130 yards on the ground and a touchdown in each of those games. So really good fantasy numbers. He's averaging 9.9 yards per carry behind an elite offensive line, and that might not stay that high, but I expect him to have a big play at least every single week. And on top of the fact, Herbert is banged up, so I think he plays, but they're probably going to lean even more on the run game this week. So love Dobbins. I don't think you can bench him. He's a top 20 play at the moment. Number 18, I have Dave Montgomery at Arizona, and it looks like close to a 50-50 touch split with him and Gibbs at the moment, and it might fade over time, but I'm still going to trust Monty for now. He's averaging 15.4 points per game, but has also scored a touchdown in each of those games. So it's more so like a 10-point floor is there for Montgomery, and you're really hoping for the touchdown. It's not going to go over 10 points without that touchdown, but so far it's hit, and I think this could be another shootout, so I'll still roll him out there, expecting the touchdown to come back to him once again. So still going to roll with Montgomery. It gets a little dicey moving forward. Number 19, I got Tony Pollard versus Green Bay, and Tajay might be hurt, so if he doesn't play, Pollard will move up a few spots. But even if Spears is healthy, Pollard is already the clear RB1 in Tennessee. He's averaging 20.5 touches per game, 4 catches per game as well is really nice for 98 yards per game. The touchdown is just like hit or miss, and we'll see about that this week. But he's going to see similar volume all season long, it feels like, and I would trust him as a safe low-end RB2 with upside if the touchdown does hit. Number 20, though, I have Kyren Williams versus San Francisco, and he is definitely moving down the ranks because of all the injuries on that team, especially to the O-line that really impacts him. But with no receiving weapons, you're worried about the Niners are just going to stack the box on every play. So I'm genuinely concerned about this team's health, and Kyren, despite getting volume, is not efficient with that volume. Only 2.5 yards per carry so far, 18.5 touches per game, 3.5 catches per game, but only 53 total yards per game. That probably continues, and it makes him very touchdown dependent. So without it, he's not going to be a safe option. I wouldn't expect 10 plus points here, but odds are if anyone scores a touchdown in this offense, it would be him, and I think you have to start him. But maybe you have the depth to compensate, but I doubt it. I would be worried if I have Kyren on my team. Number 21, though, I got Bijan Robinson Jr. at the Bengals, and the Bengals have been a bad run defense. They've allowed 126 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs, so B-Rob should be good here. He was very impressive last week on 20 touches, 3 catches. He put up 134 total yards, most of it all came on the ground. So he's been looking good. He averages 6 yards per carry so far this season, and if he scores a touchdown, you will get an excellent performance from him. But there have been some touchdowns vultured so far, and he's a pretty good candidate for that to happen all year long. So that's why I can't rank him top 20, but I think he's an excellent play, definitely top 25. No matter what, in this game, it's a good matchup on the ground. Number 22, I have Rachaad White versus Denver, who is questionable, dealing with a groin injury that they claim is not that serious. So he should be okay, but if he is limited, Bucky Irving might get more volume. And I think they should give Bucky some more touches anyway, because Rachaad is really inefficient this season. Only 2 yards per carry. That is terrible. Meanwhile, Bucky Irving is averaging 5.3 yards per carry. So I'd be very concerned about Irving's usage all year long. Maybe it's just the change of pace back that gets the better volume, but I am concerned about Rachaad's role long term. For now, I'll still trust him to a decent degree, but he gets a downgrade because of the groin injury, but I still trust him in the receiving game. He catches a lot of passes. When he was fully healthy in week 1, he had 6 catches for 75 yards. So that's what I'm going to lean into and trust. I am a little worried about his health, though, and the role long term. That's why he gets a downgrade as just a low-end RB2, high-end flex option. I'm not in love with Rachaad at the moment. Number 23, though, I have Aaron Jones versus the Texans. And the Texans have had a stout run defense so far this season. Only 38 rushing yards per game allowed. And if Taylor was not part of that equation, I would probably not read into it. Because last week it was against the Chicago Bears, and we know their O-line and run game sucks. So not sure if it's that concerning, but Aaron Jones did fumble last week, and he is in a 60-40 touch split with Chandler, which I think is a good thing for his long-term health. But you're not getting like elite volume here. You're getting about 15 touches per game, which is fine. It's not bad, but at least you're getting the targets in this backfield. Those are going to Jones. He's also getting the goal line work, and that gives him some high upside potential moving forward. But it's not the best matchup, as I mentioned, but this game should be competitive. I think he probably finds the end zone, but without it, you might get burned for less than 10 points. So good luck with Jones. I think he's okay, not elite in this game. Number 24, though, I have Jerome Ford versus the Giants. And the Giants have allowed 140 rushing yards per game, along with 51 receiving yards per game to the running back position. So that is why I like Ford this week. The matchup is excellent, and I do trust those numbers. I don't think the Giants are going to worry you at all this season against running backs. So I like that, but I'm very concerned about the usage we saw last week. He only had 7 rush attempts. Meanwhile, D'Onta Foreman had 14, and the targets kind of evaporated for Ford in week 2. So I worry about that. They lost by blowout fashion in week 1. Last week they won. So you would expect that to be the recipe for success they want to repeat. So if that happens, I would be not safe with this ranking. I would be incorrect, but I think it'll flip back in his favor. I still think he's the guy you want in this offense. He was far more efficient in terms of his touches last week, and he should still be their clear RB1. So I'm going to continue to rank him as such, but he's not an obvious start because of the murky touch split. I get it if you think this is too high, but the matchup makes me really, really excited, and I don't fully trust D'Onta at the end of the day. So I will still start Ford. I know it's a little risky, but I'm willing to trust it one more week. Number 25, though, I have Najee Harris versus the Chargers, and Najee is getting volume. You have to give him that. 19.5 touches per game so far is pretty good, but this offense is struggling to score touchdowns, and I don't think that will change. I think it's a very low-scoring game this week against the Chargers, and that's why Najee's ceiling is capped. The volume is the only thing to give you confidence. I don't think he gives you the touchdown, though. So at this point, we're clearly in flex territory, and I think 9-8 points should be the expectation for these players. But number 26 is very interesting. It's Zamir White versus the Panthers, and the Panthers have been terrible against the run so far. They've allowed 166 rushing yards per game, but that was against Kamara and the duo of the Chargers. So not totally convinced it will happen again. Zamir White has been terrible so far. He's only averaging 3.2 yards per carry, and Madison has been vulturing both of his touchdowns so far. So I don't like Zamir long term, but this matchup has me interested. But it genuinely feels like a make or break matchup for him and his fantasy value moving forward, because if he doesn't get it done here in a good matchup, when can you trust him? So if he does play well, I think you're going to try and sell high and try to argue it was like bad matchups previously, but I don't feel good about it. That's why I can't rank him higher. Like if he had been playing just decent up to this point, I'd probably have him close to RB20, but at 26, I think it's a true gamble. He's looked like shit so far, and the only reason I have him upgraded is strictly because of the matchup. That's the only value you can look to. So maybe it's enough to carry you, but I think you are concerned if you have Zamir on your team. It's not been looking good. And same applies with number 27 on this list, DeAndre Swift at the Colts. He's looked like dog shit. Swift is getting 2.0 yards per carry so far, and that is terrible. So you're not excited. The O-line looks really bad. This offense looks atrocious too. And it's really just this matchup that has you excited. The Colts have given up 175 rushing yards per game in each of the last 2 games. So really, really an upgrade in terms of matchup so far. It has been against Joe Mixon as well as Josh Jacobs. Swift is not in the same category. So that's why I can't rank him higher. I want to because the matchup is just so good, but I'm worried that they abandon the run again because they just look so horrendous. So it doesn't feel safe to trust him. You want to upgrade him, but yikes. If you're starting him, good luck. You're going to need it. Number 28, I have Devin Singletary at Cleveland, and I'm just trying to lock up the floor with this ranking because Singletary has been getting decent volume. 15.5 touches per game, 2.5 receptions per game, 74 yards per game, 5.1 yards per carry is not bad. If he does find the end zone, it makes it all worth it. But I don't think he's going to be that good this week. The matchup isn't terrible so far, but last year it was tough, and I just don't trust him to give you more than 10 points. So never really going to rank him top 25, but top 30 is the floor here. Singletary is decent if you're just looking for a safe 8-9 points. Number 29, though, I have Zack Moss versus Washington, and the Commanders have given up 45 receiving yards per game to running backs that is on the higher end of the spectrum. But I still don't fully trust Zack Moss. He looks like the running back to own in Cincinnati. The touch split has been about 12-5 per game in favor of Moss, but that's not a lot. 12 touches is nothing to be like over the moon about. And without the touchdown, you don't feel good about starting either Bengals running back. So I don't think he's that like safe. He's been a lot less efficient, but I think they trust him more to make the right decisions and not burn them. So that's why he's the guy to start in Cincinnati. But even in a solid matchup, I don't feel great about it. They're terrible against the pass, and I think they will lean a little bit more on the receivers, especially in the red zone. So not feeling good about Zack Moss, but at least feeling better about him than Chase Brown. Number 30, I have Jaylen Warren versus the Chargers, and he looks healthier now. Week 1 was very minimal usage. Last week he had 11 touches, 9 rush attempts, 2 catches, and he's far more efficient than Najee on a per-touch basis. But the offense just doesn't look good enough to score many touchdowns. That's why I don't trust him. At RB30, I think you're benching Warren until we see him score some touchdowns and look a little better. Number 31 and 32, though, I have both Cowboys running backs, Rico, Dowdle, and Ezekiel Elliott back-to-back versus Baltimore, and so far it's been a stout run defense. Only 37 rushing yards per game given up to Pacheco and Zamir White. So not crazy about this matchup, but the reason I rank Rico above Zeke is that he's had more touches so far through 2 games. It's good to see 5 targets for Rico, but it's still close to a 50-50 split. It's not obvious which one you're trusting, but it does look like Dowdle is a bit more efficient so far, and he is the younger player. I think there is some more explosive upside. I would rather start Dowdle, but I don't think it's like obvious. You could tell me Zeke has the better game because you're hoping for a touchdown with either one, and so far Zeke has had more of a goal line role. It's just not guaranteed to hit with either. So good luck to you. Wish me some luck. I'm starting Dowdle in replacement of Pacheco this week in the subscriber league, and I need all the luck I can get. Number 33, I have Chuba Hubbard at Las Vegas, and the Raiders have been bad on the ground. They've given up 134 rushing yards per game to J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Derrick Henry, so maybe it's not something to read into. But Chuba has actually ran for 4.9 yards per carry, so I think Canales should be leaning on him more, and it feels like they're going to change up the offensive game plan a lot moving forward now that they benched Bryce Young. So I think we'll see less of Sanders. That's what you're hoping for here, but it's not a guarantee. And if it does happen, then I do like the matchup for some potential upside. But it just feels too risky to really trust. You might be getting a little more volume with Hubbard, but it's still a committee, and you are gambling with any Panther at the end of the day. So hopefully it works out. It's a good matchup, but the team might still suck. I think Dalton does help them, but by how much? Until Brooks comes into the equation, it's hard to trust any Panthers player, at least at the moment. So not ideal. I'd rather bench him, but I get it if you're desperate enough to start him. Number 34, I have Samaje Perine, followed by Carson Steele at 35 of the Chiefs. And this ranking is going to change if they do add Kareem Hunt. Without Pacheco, we really have no idea what to expect. This run game could be atrocious, and that's why I do think they want to bring in Kareem Hunt. So I don't think you want to start any of them. I think I'd prefer Hunt straight up, but until he signs, we just don't know, and that's why I don't really trust this backfield at all this week. I'd rather wait and see to get some clarity, but I think you'd prefer Perine for his pass-catching role. Until CEH returns, there's no one that I think I really trust, and even then, that's kind of dicey. CEH is on IR, though, right now, so there's no relief for quite a while. Number 36, though. Now we're looking at straight up backups. I got Ty Chandler versus Houston, and he did not get a target in week 2, but he also turned 10 carries into 82 yards. He's ran for 5.5 yards per carry through 2 weeks, and the O-line is pretty solid. So he's getting 40% of the touches. It's not bad in Minnesota, and that's what makes him a decent play if you have to plug in a backup into your lineup. 36, you could do worse. Number 37, though, I got Bucky Irving versus Denver, and he might move up the ranks considerably with Rachaad's injury at the moment. He's averaging 5.3 yards per carry, so I like his talent, and he doesn't look too bad. We'll see what happens if Rachaad doesn't stay 100% for a while. Number 38, though, the last starting running back I will mention is Javonte Williams at Tampa Bay, and the Bucs rank worst against running backs in the receiving department. They average 9.5 catches per game given up, along with 88 receiving yards per game to the running back position. So you're really hoping that boosts Javonte's value this week. The problem is that Jaleel McLaughlin is more so the receiving back so far. So it's not clear what you're getting from this backfield at all. Javonte has looked terrible, an average of 2.1 yards per carry. Nothing you can trust. And while he might get some targets to pad the stats, I just don't trust a single Broncos running back right now. It's too risky to bet on. So I will pass on Javonte. I was right to fade him coming into the year. Number 39, I have Austin Eckler at Cincinnati, and he's averaging 3.5 catches per game and 14.1 yards per catch. So very efficient in the passing game. He's not offering much else, but he doesn't look washed like he did last season. He's not a terrible start. Number 40, I have Gus Edwards at Pittsburgh, and Dobbins is averaging 9.9 yards per carry. Meanwhile, Gus is averaging 2.9 yards per carry. So it's all him. He just sucks. The offensive line is great, but it's kind of obvious when he comes on the field what play they're going to run. It's either a handoff to Gus or, they throw it to one of their mediocre receivers. So it's easy to stop him. I think Dobbins offers a lot more burst and a little bit of disguised plays because Dobbins actually catches a few passes, but it's still a 50-50 touch split. It's actually been favoring Gus by like 1 touch per game, and inevitably he will find the end zone, but I don't think you trust him. He's got a very low ceiling even when that happens, and you're just hoping that he finds the end zone. It hasn't happened yet, so hard to trust him. You want Dobbins for sure in this backfield. These last 10, I'll kind of speed through a little bit. I got Chase Brown at 41 versus Washington, and he's averaging 6 yards per carry, but only on 5 touches per game. The volume is not good enough to trust. Right now, you would be starting Moss if you're starting one of the Bengals backfield players. Number 42, though, I have Braylon Allen versus New England, and he had 2 explosive touchdowns in week 2. This team needs a third guy to step up every week, and it could be him. At least handcuff him to Breece. With all these injuries at running backs, you need some insurance in terms of depth. Number 43, I have Cam Akers at Minnesota, and you want to monitor Mixon's health because Pierce is also hurt, so we might see Akers get the start and have workhorse potential next week against Minnesota. So that's his former team. Maybe he finds the end zone. It's really just going to come down to what is Mixon's status going into that game. Number 44, though, I have Deontay Foreman versus the Giants, and he had 14 rush attempts last week after 0 in week 1. So he might have emerged in this backfield. He could have the Kareem Hunt role on lock, and it looks like I could be too low in the rankings, honestly. It's a good matchup, and it's possible he's like a top 35 option moving forward if Jerome Ford does not get back to that RB1 role. I'm a little worried about Ford. Foreman, though, I want to see one more week before I trust. Number 45, I have Tank Bigsby at Buffalo, and he is banged up, but if he plays, he might see another 50-50 touch split with Etienne. He's worth considering if you're desperate. Number 46, I have Antonio Gibson versus Seattle, and he looked good last week, but how often is that going to happen? I doubt it happens that often. I'm still only trusting Rhamondre Stevenson. Number 47, I have Tyler Algier versus the Chiefs, and on 6 rush attempts per game, he is efficient, averaging 6.2 yards yards per carry, but you can't trust him. The workload is just not big enough. He only offers that handcuff appeal to Bijan Robinson, who I think you should target and pick up if you can. Number 48, I have Tyjae Spears versus Green Bay, who is questionable. He's banged up right now and not getting much volume either way, so it clearly favors Pollard. I don't think you're starting Tyjae no matter what. 49, I have Jamaal Williams versus Philly, and he is averaging 10 touches per game so far, and he might luck into a touchdown and save you, but I'm not going to trust him. I think it's been a bit fluky, his usage so far. Last player I will mention is Kareem Hunt at Atlanta, and right now he's not signed. He might potentially join the Chiefs, but I'm keeping him on the watch list. He would be my preferred Chiefs running back if he does sign, and I just want to bring him up because I would actually rank him above Perine and Carson Steele if he does get the start. But I probably wouldn't rank him higher than 34. I think it's a little too dicey to like truly know for sure what will happen, but I do think he would be the guy to pick up if he does sign. We'll see what happens, but I think he's the guy that has the most value behind Pacheco in this backfield. Consider him if you need depth behind Pacheco. That's it for my running back rankings. These are the top 40 here on the screen, and I feel really good about the top 11 this week. I think everyone through Taylor should have a solid game. I want to feel good about Mixon, Charbonnet, and Connor, but the matchups aren't like the best, and there are some injuries looming for at least Mixon in that group. So the top 14 are the guys that are like locked into your lineup. It gets a little dicier after Etienne, but I still think all the way through Aaron Jones, I think you have to start them if you have them. I think they're very good plays this week, at worst as a flex option. But starting with Jerome Ford is where I'm like, yikes, let's hope for the best here. There are some good matchups looming for like Zamir White, DeAndre Swift, but not a lot of like solid production so far to feel like exceptional about all of these players outside the top 23. So once you hit Rico, Dowdle, I think you're definitely benching players, like starting with Zeke. No thanks, it feels too risky, but who knows? Maybe Chuba offers some value. Maybe some of those backups like Bucky Irving, Ty Chandler also play well, and then we'll see what happens in the Chiefs backfield. But I feel good about the top 23. After that, not so much. That's going to be it for me in this video. My name is Adam Riancho, and if you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.